Hi guys, keep this one short hopefully. Quite a few people in the comments on my Warhammer and Mace and Axe videos have asked about parrying with those weapons. And the very simple answer is, did people use these sort of percussion weapons, you know, where you've got a shaft, a wooden shaft usually, or sometimes a metal shaft, with a weighted, you know, an axe or a mace or a warhammer end? Did they use them for defensive parrying actions, or did they just rely on shields? Well, the simple answer is yes, they did use them for parrying actions, and we can show this explicitly from certain medieval and Renaissance art sources, and it's mentioned tangentially in the medieval combat treatises as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of detail in the medieval combat treatises because they don't generally talk much, if anything at all, about these sort of weapons, which is the reason for that is another topic that I'll leave for a different video. But certainly if you look at the Battle of San Romano painting by Paolo Uccello, that shows and that's from the 1430s if I remember correctly, that shows, to me anyway, quite clearly what we would call a rabat or rabatting action. In other words, a beating aside of an incoming weapon. So as a horseman with a warhammer, I have to do it left-handed as you know, and it looks like a sword has come in and he is actually striking upwards and off to the side to beat aside the incoming weapon with his warhammer, and having beaten aside the incoming weapon is just about to come back down again on his opponent's head or arm. There are other examples in art as well. And you know, how would you parry with such a thing? Well, clearly it's not as nimble as a sword. The weight is at the hitting end. However, when you're blocking and parrying with a thing, it actually doesn't matter that much where the weight lies in the object, because the way you move it is you're not generally swinging it to defend unless you're doing this rabatting action that I just spoke about. If you're just blocking, you actually don't have to contend with the weight very much, because the weight kind of stays there, and you move the shaft into a place where it needs to be to defend yourself. So very clearly you can put this in the way of a blow and then come back with your own riposte blow. Or you could use these rabatting actions where an incoming blow is coming in, and for those of you who do German longsword, for example, a Zornhau, you can very clearly do a Zornhau with a warhammer or a mace or an axe. The only thing I'd mention in addition to that is that you have this extra feature with axes and warhammers in particular, that you have a projection on either side. You obviously don't with a mace, really, but with a warhammer or an axe you have this projection, and that has an added effect of actually hooking the object out of the way. So whichever side you use, if a blow's coming in and you sweep it out of the way, not only are you knocking it out of the way with the shaft, but it will also go up to the end and actually hook on at the end of your weapon as well. So you can actually bind a little bit better with these than you can with swords. There we go. And the other thing to mention as well is, of course, and we know they did this with poleaxes, because poleaxes are we've got very detailed treatises for, as well as other long pole weapons. And we know, of course, that they did block essentially in what we would call half sword. Blocking between the hands or with a longer pole. I don't have one available unfortunately right here. You could block above the hand, or indeed you could block with the tail with below the hand as well. And we know that this was done with poleaxes, with partisans, with halberds, bills and so on. Okay, it's detailed in the Bolognese treatises of the 16th century. It's also detailed in all of the poleaxe treatises of the 15th century. So, you know, for example, Paulus Cal, Talhofer, Fiore de Liberi, Filippo Vardi, and so on. So there we go. Yes, pole weapons and short pole weapons like this were definitely used for defensive actions, both beating aside and also just straight blocking, and potentially, possibly, with hooking actions with the beak or the hammer or the axe blade as well. And final thing I'll say, and I mentioned this in a previous video but I'll mention it again, is that Fiore de Liberi in his mounted section shows techniques of the one-handed sword on horseback, and he has an interesting just little sentence note whereby he basically says that this technique can be done with any short one-handed weapon, for example a stick or some other manual weapon. And I take that to indicate that what he's showing with the one-handed sword on horseback